Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. And there's actually a few strange coincidences going on for this video. Because first of all, not only is this my 25th video, but I am actually turning 25 years old as well. What a coincidence! At the time of me recording this, I'm still just 24 years old, but by the time I upload this, I should be 25 years old. In fact, I'm actually going to upload this the morning after my birthday. So, you know, after we have fun and all that right there, I should be 25 by the time this video comes up. And I wanted to do something special for this video to kind of commemorate, you know, like the fact that this is actually my 25th video, which is crazy to think that I've made that many videos on YouTube already. And as my birthday approached, I started to think of a lot of the really strange and weird anomalies that have occurred over my life. And I realized that there's been many things that I have learned over the years. And I decided that since this is my 25th video and I'm turning 25 years old, why not share them here? So this is 25 things that I have learned in 25 years. Number 25. A little bit of escapism is okay. Now, I know that might sound weird, especially since we're constantly told about the dangers of constantly relying on escapism. But as I started college and I started to go through these years of, you know, this intense work, and as I started to do things like work in the movie industry and all that right there, I started to realize that there were times where I definitely just needed a break and just needed to rely on a little bit of escapism. And doing things like playing video games or just, you know, like watching football, watching movies is actually very helpful. In fact, I would actually say that it's important that you at least indulge in a little bit of escapism, because I've often noticed that when I watch these movies, TV shows, play video games or books or whatever, I often notice that that is where definitely I get my most creative ideas. That is where I definitely get inspirations for certain projects that I want to do, or certain projects that I want to write and want to see when they get filmed. And that's why I say that a little bit of escapism is okay. But that's the thing, a little bit of escapism. Don't rely on it entirely. And in fact, there's actually going to be a point later on in this video, but we'll get to that in a bit. But I would definitely say that if you're aspiring to be a director or writer, absolutely indulge in a little bit of escapism, because like I said, that is where you will definitely get a lot of inspirations, and you will definitely start to get your own creative ideas. And typically what I found myself doing is that I would get like an idea from one movie and an idea from another movie and just combine those two ideas together. And you often find that a lot when you indulge in just a little bit of escapism. Number 24 is who you know matters more than what you know. Now, I'm sure many of you guys have heard this statement and probably just rolled your eyes at it, but I cannot tell you how many times I got those abilities because I knew somebody that was on set and they decided to invite me on to help out. It is an absolutely very true statement. In fact, one of the reasons why I got involved in the film industry was because one of my counselors at school knew somebody that worked in the film industry, and then that's how I was able to get involved with that right there. So as, you know, eye-rolling as this statement may be, people are going to absolutely rely on those that they know rather than rely on those that they don't know but may have the skills needed for the job that they want done. So while yes, it is eye-rolling to hear that statement, it's an absolutely very true statement. Number 23 is that sometimes embarrassing yourself can actually help. Now, I know that might sound counterintuitive, but hear me out. Before I start this YouTube channel, I had actually wanted to start this channel way back many years, but I never had the courage to do so because I was always afraid of embarrassing myself. But over the summer in 2025, I worked on this movie production where they actually asked me to play a role in it. A speaking role. That was definitely something that I had never done before. I've done like background acting, but I had never done a speaking role in any film. And you can bet when I was on set and I was doing that role, I was absolutely nervous as heck. Like, I was just sweating bullets the entire time. It was just crazy. And the role was supposed to be a comedic role, and I was kind of worried, like, oh, like, how are people gonna like perceive it? Are people gonna like find me lame? But then it finally got shown and people actually laughed and they actually liked it a lot. So I was just kind of like taken back by, wow, like I felt like so embarrassed during the moment. But actually I was wrong. People actually ended up liking it, and that's why I say that embarrassing yourself can actually help, because doing that role right there actually helped me finally make this channel. But after doing that role, I was like, you know what? Like, I embarrassed myself right there and it was freaking awesome. What the heck? Let's start with this channel now. And that's why I would say, like, don't be afraid to embarrass yourself, because then you will often notice that once you finally embarrass yourself, you kind of, in a sense, you kind of come out of your shell and you become more willing to do other things that most people wouldn't be able to do because, you know, they're still in their shell, they're still embarrassed. So absolutely do not be afraid to embarrass yourself. Number 22 is don't be mysterious. Reach out. Now, this is a mistake that I made all throughout middle school, high school, and even the first few years of my college life. For some reason, I don't know why, I had this thought in my head that, oh, if I'm super mysterious, if I'm constantly like, I have my trench coat and I'm constantly just like, oh my gosh, no one knows anything about me. People are one day gonna ask me about me. They don't know anything about me. For some reason, I thought that was the case. I thought that if I acted super mysterious, people would at some point start to become curious about me and would ask about me. That never happened. That never once happened. So please do not go through life just being mysterious and never reaching out to anybody. What you will often find is that if you expect people to reach out to you, that almost never happens. And sad to say, it even happens with some of your most loved ones. I've even noticed that some of my most loved ones, some of my family members and friends, they even don't reach out to me if I don't reach out to them first. And I'm not saying that that's because like they don't care about me or whatever. It's just a reality of life, is that people like it better when you reach out to them as opposed to when they reach out to you. And maybe at some point you will come across people that care about you enough to reach out to you. But for the most part, you will have to reach out to others and not be just, oh, mysterious. Oh my god, I got my cape, I got my trench coat. Nobody knows anything about me. I'm super mysterious. No, do not have that mindset. And remember, because somebody doesn't reach out to you consistently, that doesn't mean that they don't care about you, they don't like you. They could just have a super busy life. I promise you, the moment you stop being mysterious and you actually start reaching out to people, you will actually start to notice that they will actually reach out to you more and more often, because now you're showing that you care about them. So in return, they're going to start showing that same care back to you. So stop being mysterious, okay? Number 21 is don't raise your voice. I cannot tell you how many times I have been in a situation where, typically this happens in customer service, where there's an issue that occurs and it's a fairly easy issue to fix, but it gets completely blown out of proportion because the customer decides to just start screaming and yelling and just making the situation just so much worse. And it's honestly crazy to just see how many adults don't understand that simply keeping a low tone of voice and not raising your voice actually causes problems to actually get solved immediately. It's so crazy. In fact, there was this one story I recall where I was at McDonald's, and I guess what happened is that this guy thought that this girl had stolen his seat, and the guy got pretty upset. And there was another customer that was there that basically called out the guy, like in a slight way. Like he was just like, oh, come on, like really guys, are you guys really getting upset over a seat? And the guy ended up getting so upset where he's like, oh, mind your own business, mind your own business. Why does nobody mind their own business? And what started happening is that because he was getting so angry and he was starting to yell it out for everyone to hear, more people started interjecting. More people started coming in and telling him to calm down. And the entire time, this guy was like, oh, people need to mind their own business. People need to learn how to mind their own business. But he was so dumb. He was too stupid to realize that if he just didn't raise his voice, nobody would be interfering. Everyone would be minding their own business. People would be minding their own business if he just simply did not raise his voice. It's honestly crazy to just see how many people don't understand that. In fact, there's actually a storytime video that I'm going to make that details this exact same lesson that I've learned being played. That's going to be for the storytime video. For now, just know, do not raise your voice. Trust me, you will find that oftentimes when there's problems that are starting to arise, if you keep a low tone of voice and you don't raise your voice, you will often notice that those problems often get fixed pretty fast. Number 20 is never put things off. I did mention this slightly in lesson 23, but I had been wanting to make this YouTube channel for years. The earliest I can think of is all the way back in 2019, but I just never did. And then I thought maybe 2020 I'd start. Didn't happen. 2021, 2022, 23, 24. And all this time, I just kept on pushing it back and pushing it back and pushing it back, just thinking that at some point I'm going to get to it. And I just often found that doing that, it just wastes so many years of your life. And you may notice that when you put things off and say that you're going to do it later, oftentimes before you realize it, you may notice that a lot of time has passed since when you originally said you were going to do something. So that's why, even though, yes, I am happy that now I have finally started my YouTube channel and I'm now making videos, I do wish that I had started this channel back in 2019. That is the one thing that I would say that I wish I had done differently. So that's why, it's a lesson that I definitely learned, that you should never just put things off. If there's something that you want to get to and you want to work on it, start right now. And that's oftentimes the hardest part about doing anything. Really, it's not the detailed, intricate work of like when you're in the middle. Really, the hardest part about getting projects done and doing anything, often the hardest part is just getting started. Because when you're getting started, it's like you're basically looking at a mountain. Like you're basically looking at a mountain from the very bottom. But once you finally get started, you will realize just how easy the process is, and you will really just get so into it that basically at some point you're just like, no, I want to see this all the way through. So that's why it's just important to never put things off. Always start on it. If there's something that seems daunting, just start on it, because you're going to notice that if you start to put it off, you're going to notice just so much time pass before finally you realize, oh shoot, I've completely put this off for so long. I need to get to it right now. So that's my lesson for this one. Do not put things off. Number 19 is never back down on what you believe is right. Now, I'm gonna get into a personal testimony. I know that I've been telling a lot of personal testimony, but this one, however, is really close and dear to me. During the pandemic, I lived in California. In fact, I lived in California for my entire life. And if you know anything about California during the COVID pandemic, you know that it had some of the most restrictive COVID guidelines in the entire country. And one of the most restrictive guidelines was the fact that they were mandating that you had to get COVID shots in order to enter into certain facilities, in order to go back to school in person, and in order to do so many things. And while I don't deny the effectiveness of the COVID shots, I was not a big fan of the whole mandates or anything like that, or just the idea of forcing people to get something that they don't want. I did not support that one bit, so I made the decision to not get the COVID shot, and to this day I still have never gotten it, and I absolutely was hit hard by it. I wasn't allowed to do any of the stuff that so many other people were capable of doing. And I still remember one of the weirdest moments was when I was walking by his university and I decided to go into a coffee shop, and they asked to scan my palm. They actually asked to scan my palm for the COVID vaccine. That was freaky, that was weird, but I guess the reason why I did not back down from this and why I stood firm despite how I was getting treated, it's funny because this actually kind of ties into a later lesson that I'm going to talk about later on in this video. But my stance was, hey, if I cannot stand for what I believe is right in this situation, how am I going to stand for other things that I believe as well? And that's really what it came down to. And there were so many people, including some of my closest friends, would try to chalk it up to, oh, you don't care about other people's lives. You don't care about if people die. Oh, you're selfish and you don't care about other people's lives. Like that was literally something that one of my closest friends told me. And what I would say to them was constantly, no, it's not about COVID or the shot or anything like that. It's about the fact that I believe that it is wrong to force people to do something that they don't want to do. That I firmly believe that is wrong to do. And I stood by it. And yes, I suffered heavily throughout that pandemic, but I felt that once I finally came out of it, that I was definitely a much stronger person when I came out of it. And I feel like now I can definitely approach things much more easily because I went through that. And honestly, the thing is that those were some of the worst years of my life. The pandemic year was just some of the worst years of my life. Like I would never want to go through that. But despite me never wanting to go through that, I'm actually glad that I went through it, because it allowed me to gain the strength to actually go out and actually do things that I never would have thought I would be able to do. And that's why I say with my entire being to never back down from what you believe is right, because you will often find that when you stand for what is right, you often find that you become a much stronger person. In some cases, you often find that life becomes better because now you have that mental fortitude. You have that strength and that mental strength to basically say like, hey, I went through this, okay? I withstood this, right? If I can withstand this, I can withstand anything. And that's really the main thing that I learned from the pandemic. And that's just the main point that I want to drive home with this lesson. It's just never back down from what you believe is right. Number 18 is explore the great big world. Since the beginning of the 2020s, I have been on 4 major trips, and those were to Michoacan, Mexico, Big Bear, California, Sequoia National Park, and Salt Lake City in Utah. And I could definitely tell you for a fact, all 4 times when I went on those trips, they were absolutely life-changing. They really opened my eyes to some of the things that happened here that either I was just not okay with, or things that I recognized like, wow, I really have it extremely well here. The most impactful trip that I went to was Big Bear, because that was during the pandemic. And when I went there, it kind of reminded me that there was this huge world that I was just missing out on because I was just stuck at this dead-end job, just basically slaving away. And it kind of just opened my eyes. I realized that in a sense, I wanted to start living again. So because of that, I decided to finally just start taking all this risk and start, joining all these communities, which will be a point later on in this video, but we'll get to that when that comes. But I wouldn't have came to that conclusion if I didn't go out and, basically exploring this great big world. So that's definitely a lesson. Go out and explore this great big world. Lesson number 17 is worrying about the future is pointless. Worrying about the future is truly pointless, and because you really don't know what's gonna happen in the future. There are so many things that could happen, and it kind of goes in line with 2 later lessons that I'm gonna talk about in the later part of this video, but you really don't know what's gonna happen in the future. And to prove that point, let me ask you this question. Do you know what's gonna happen tomorrow? Like, do you know for sure that everything that's gonna happen tomorrow is 100% guaranteed? Like, you know for a fact it's gonna for sure happen. You will bet your life on it that what's gonna happen tomorrow is exactly what's gonna happen. And I guess my point that I'm trying to make is that really none of us know what's gonna happen tomorrow. Like, what if you get into a car accident? What if someone offers you $1 million? What if the aliens finally arrive? Okay, we got a little bit off topic right there. You miss out on the present. You miss out on what's going on right now in this moment. And I think a lot of times people often focus about, oh, let me prepare for the future. Let me make sure I set myself up for the future and be successful in the future. And while yes, that is important, in fact, that will be a lesson later down the line, but in a different way, you'll see what I'm talking about. It is still important to enjoy the now, enjoy the moment right now, because you only get this moment right now. So that's why I just think that worrying about the future is pointless. Lesson number 16, sometimes a change of plans is better than the original plans. This kind of goes in line with my previous lesson, but the point about this is that sometimes a change of plans is actually better than the original plans. And I know that might sound counterintuitive, because a lot of times we have plans for how we want certain things to play out, or for what we want to do for the next several years of our life. And that's totally understandable. But something that I have learned is that sometimes when plans change, when something happens that just makes plans change, it's actually sometimes for the better. And there's no better example of that happening in my life than my time in college. When I graduated high school back in 2019, I had intention of doing what everyone else was going to do. Go to a community college for 2 years and then go to a university for 4 years. But then the pandemic hit and that set everything back. And at first I thought it was horrible that I have to spend so much more time in college than I should have. But it ended up being a blessing in disguise, because many of the friends that I have today, I wouldn't have had them as friends if I didn't stay in college for as long as I did. And at the same time, my time in the film industry wouldn't have started if I didn't spend as much time in college as I did. And it's just this really weird ripple effect that just happened because the original plans changed. And I guess when that happened, that's when I recognized that even though yes, I may have my plans and I may want to just try to stick hard to the plans no matter how bad things get, no matter how much things get just so crazy and out of control, I learned that sometimes the change of plans is actually better, and they really could be blessings in disguise. So that's why I say just be open to a change of plans, and sometimes you'll often find that the change of plans is better than the original plans. Lesson number 15 is don't dwell on regrets. We dwell on mistakes that we made back in the past. There's a healthy way and there's an unhealthy way of doing this. The unhealthy way of doing this is just constantly dwelling on it, just constantly thinking that you're never gonna improve your life based on a mistake or regret that you made. The healthy way of doing that is just saying, look, that was a bad mistake that I made, but you know what? I recognize what I did wrong, and I'm gonna make sure that I don't make that same mistake again. That's really the healthy way to do it. And I've often done that a lot of times with myself. I've often recognized that there are times when I would just be sitting alone and I start thinking about something that I did in the past, and then I catch myself and I just think to myself look, hey, we can't worry about that, okay? We gotta worry about just now, okay? We're gonna make sure that we don't make that same mistake now, okay? And this kind of actually ties into my next lesson that I learned, which is don't be a no man. Now, if you watch the movie Yes Man, which stars Jim Carrey, you probably get an idea as to what this is like. And while yes, that's just a movie, there is actually some truth behind it, because I remember during the pandemic, I would constantly say no to so many things because I was just constantly working, and I was constantly exhausted when I would get out of work, to where when the few times I did get invited to things, I would just say no, no, no. And eventually the people who constantly would try to invite me to things, they would just stop inviting me because they just automatically assumed that I was going to say no. But I recognized that as soon as I started saying yes to things and started saying yes to certain gatherings or certain parties or whatever, things like that, I just started noticing that my life did all of a sudden it just get better, and it just kept on getting better and better and better. Now, of course, with that being said, that doesn't mean I'm saying you have to say yes to everything. Obviously, if someone doesn't like offer you drugs or offers to go rob a bank or like kill somebody, like whatever, obviously you say no to that right there. But you'd be surprised at how much better your life gets when you start saying yes to some of the small things in life, whether if it's your friends asking you, hey, you want to come to the movies with us, you want to come have fun with us, or it's just like certain family gatherings. Like rather than just saying no because, oh, you're tired, you're exhausted from work, just actually go out and actually just have fun with them. And trust me, it's something that you end up not regretting. There's been a lot of friends that I've met simply because rather than just simply saying no to going to a certain event or certain place because I was tired and exhausted from work, I decided to say yes, and I ended up meeting those friends. So I highly recommend that you stop being a no man. Lesson number 13 is waking up early is king. I have actually noticed that waking up early actually does make your life better. It actually does make you happier. It's funny because about a few years ago, I would probably say maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I saw a video that was titled 15 ways to make your life miserable. One of the ways that he brought up was waking up late, and he actually brought up a good reason why exactly that's the case, because in this video he describes how when you wake up late, you essentially are letting everyone else get a head start on you. Everyone has already gone through with their days, they're already up and going while you're barely just starting. But if you wake up early, you actually do become more happier because you are essentially getting a head start over everyone else. You've essentially won the day before it even started. And I decided to try this tactic for myself. I can tell you for a fact right now that it absolutely works. I remember during the pandemic, I wasn't waking up till like 10 in the morning, 11 in the morning, and I was absolutely miserable during that time. But then I decided to start changing my strategy, where instead I would wake up at 8 a.m., 7 a.m., and then 6 a.m. And I just noticed a huge difference in my mood when I started waking up early. And it's because of that reason. Because when I started waking up early, I felt that by the time noon would come, I was essentially done with all the tasks I needed to get done, and now I could just have fun and do whatever. So I absolutely recommend that waking up early is the best thing that you could possibly do. In fact, it's the thing that you can actually start doing right now. If you want a way to start improving your life and start living a much more happier life, waking up early is actually the thing you could start doing right now. Lesson number 12 is the content you watch can change your mood. This is especially true, especially if you spend a lot of time on YouTube or TikTok, especially like me. I spend a lot of my time on YouTube, and I definitely noticed this a lot because back during the pandemic years, I would watch a bunch of conspiracy theory content, and I just started noticing that as I kept on watching this type of content, I just noticed that my personality, my behavior, and just my mood and outlook on life just became extremely dim. It became extremely nihilistic, in that I just constantly had this feeling where there was people that were constantly out to get me and all that stuff right there. The type of content that you watch can absolutely affect your mood. So I would definitely say that one thing that you should know is make sure you pick content that kind of, lifts you up, that doesn't, black pill you and just, give you like bad advice or just like make you feel down about everything. A lot of times the content that you watch does impact your mood and how you go about life, because like I said, if you're constantly watching material that is just meant to black pill you, you're gonna be black pilled throughout your entire life. So that's why I highly recommend is just be careful of the content that you watch, because it absolutely does affect your mood. Lesson number 11 is never compare yourself to others. Now, this is definitely something that I am still guilty of to this day, but it's something that I'm definitely working on. And I think it's one of those things where it's pretty self-explanatory of why you shouldn't compare yourself to others. But to put it simply, like, you shouldn't do that because everyone moves at their own pace. To give you a good example, when I finally came back to college in person, I was taking all these classes for, for film and animation and all that right there. And I would just constantly see all these people that were just taking 5 or 6 different classes all at once. And I would just constantly think to myself, man, like, I wish I was at their level now. I wish I could just match their pace and how fast they were going. But I guess at some point I started to kind of realize, like, look, that's their lives and their situation. Like, who knows? Like, maybe they have like something that lets them just completely go that fast. That's just simply not me. Like, I need to go at my pace and I need to get better at my craft at my pace. Most of the times when we compare ourselves to other, we do it based off of how fast we're moving in life, and we compare to, like, how good our life is compared to the other person's life. And I just think that there's really nothing to gain from it, because like I said, everyone moves at a different pace. Everyone has their own definition of what a successful life is to them. And that's why I think it's just super important to just never compare yourself to others, because it's perfectly okay to just move at your own pace and just get better at your own craft while you're moving at your own pace. Lesson number 10 is change often comes fast and without warning. Now this kind of coincides with a lesson that I talked about earlier, especially the one where I talked about how a change of plans is actually better than the original plans. Now this lesson actually kind of coincides with the lesson I was talking about earlier about how a change of plans is actually better than the original plans, and it's better to realize that immediately because of this lesson that I learned. And that is true, that change often comes just very fast and without warning. I can definitely count on 2 occasions in my life where change just happened like that, and I had to immediately adapt to my new life. It was honestly 2 of the craziest situations that happened. One of them was the pandemic, of course, where changes came like that, and I had to adapt to a new way of living for the next several years. The other one is a more personal one, and I don't think I'll ever get into it in this channel. But to put it simply, yeah, these 2 instances in my life, change just came without warning, and before I knew it, my entire life had just been flipped upside down. And you can possibly argue to this day, I'm still kind of dealing with the ripple effects of the change that happened within those 2 time periods. So that's why I often say that it's better to accept the change of plans than constantly trying to stick to the original plans, because of this lesson right here. Lesson number 9, focus on long-term happiness and not short-term satisfaction. Now this may contradict a lesson that I had talked about earlier, in the sense that you shouldn't worry about the future, but just like the regrets lesson that I was talking about, there's a healthy and unhealthy way to do this. The unhealthy way of doing this is, of course, to just focus on like only the future and just never care about what's going on right now in the moment. The healthy way to focus on long-term happiness is by thinking of goals that are going to actually not only improve your life, but probably even improve the lives of those around you and the lives of maybe even your children one day. But it's true, you should always focus on long-term happiness as well, but at the same time try to find a way to enjoy the moment right now. You should always make sure that you're at least saving up something for the future. And when I thought of long-term happiness, the first time I was thinking about it, I was always thinking about it in the sense of, let me think about myself. Let me think about what happiness can I do for myself. But I think as I've grown older, I kind of have realized that when they say long-term happiness, they're talking about more like a family, like more like having kids. Like try to think of long-term happiness and what are you going to save for your kids. And I think that's the best way to look at it. So absolutely enjoy the moment right now for yourself, but make sure you save some on the side for your kids when that time of your life finally comes. Lesson number 8, never center your life around things you can't control. This is definitely a good way to just be completely unhappy with life. If you begin to center your life around things that are just completely out of your control, you often find that those things often let you down because you're not in control of them, and it just ends up making you extremely unhappy and extremely bitter. I'm gonna use myself as an example. Back during the pandemic years, since everything was shut down and I couldn't meet any friends or anything like that, I would often just center everything around the Chargers, around just watching football. Can you imagine what it's like centering your entire happiness around a football team, especially the Chargers of all football teams? Yeah, that didn't go so good. Once I finally realized that I need to start centering my life around things that I can control and things that either I just need more of a certain thing, and you're gonna find out what that other thing is that I decided to center my life around later on in this video. But it's not just sports as well. I notice that people often center their lives around things that they just shouldn't be caring that much about, whether if it's things like politics or just other celebrities or whatever. Like I know people just center their lives around those things, and then when things inevitably don't go their way, they become so unhappy and they become bitter and they become like almost unhinged. It's kind of crazy. So that's why I say that it's just so important not to center your life around things you can't control, because really all it's gonna do is just lead to complete bitterness and just complete anger, and you're just not gonna be happy that way. Lesson number 7, surround yourself with the right people. Now I know this one may sound cliche, but it's absolutely true, and I can use a personal example of myself where there's been many times where I would spend a lot of my time at work, and I would work with coworkers that just simply were absolutely pains to work with, whether they just simply didn't do the work that was there or they just simply weren't good people to be around. And a lot of times, since I was constantly spending so much time around those people, it would actually start to impact the way I would act, and it would impact the way I would start to behave, my mood, and just how I would treat other people. But I noticed that once I started spending time with people who gave off positive energy and actually wanted what was best for me, I all of a sudden noticed that my mood and my mentality and just everything about me started to change, where I all of a sudden had a more positive mindset as to a negative mindset. And that's why it's just so important to just make sure you surround yourself with the right people. Surround yourself with people who do these two things: A, lift you up and not bring you down, people who, bring you positivity instead of negativity, and B, make sure you surround yourself with people who actually want what's best for you and aren't just trying to downplay you, just belittle you, or heck, even people that are just only using you because they see you as something that they can benefit from. Make sure that you separate yourself from those people and you surround yourself with people who give you nothing but positivity and actually want what's best for you. Lesson number 6. Having a positive mindset can change a lot. This one I have recognized single-handedly just how important it is to have a positive mindset. Now, let me make this very clear. Let's say right now I decide to have an extremely positive mindset, just beyond the gate, just have a positive mindset. Like, I don't think I can have a positive mindset and then all of a sudden become an NFL player or NBA player, but having a positive mindset and having that mentality of I can do this because I have the will and the determination to do this is absolutely important in succeeding. It's honestly kind of crazy how there's been many things that have happened in the last few years for me that I don't think I would have ever been able to do if I didn't have the mindset of, hey, you know what? I think this is going to go good for me. I think this is going to go great. Let's go out there and let's get it. I will again bring up my time during the pandemic because those were some of the worst years of my life. During that time, I chose to have a negative mindset and just a really nihilistic mindset. And that hurt me a lot because I wasn't able to get much done during that time period because of that. But once I finally started to change my mindset and I finally decided, you know what, I'm going to look at this in a positive way. I'm going to start approaching things in a positive way. And I promise you, the moment you shift to that positive mindset, and some people call it the white pill mindset. There's the black pill mindset and then the white pill mindset. The black pill mindset is kind of the mindset of, oh, there's no point to any of this. There's no point to living. Oh, like everything is rigged against you. But the white pill mindset is, hey, look at the bright side. Look at what you've accomplished. Look at what we can accomplish. I absolutely recommend that you have the white pill mindset, since I can attest from personal testimony that having this type of positive white pill mindset absolutely changed so much in my life. Lesson number 5, the safe route is always the most dangerous route. Now, I know what you're thinking. How is the safe route the most dangerous route? It's literally called the safe route. I'm gonna tell you. One thing that I learned quickly was that it's better to take risk and fail rather than to never take a risk and then regret that you never took that risk. And that was part of the reason why I ended up returning to college in person back in 2023, was because I realized that I was starting to miss out on so much. I was missing out on so much. During that time, I was legitimately really scared of failing. I guess as time started to pass, I realized that I wanted to start living again. And the way to start living again was by taking the dangerous route, or I guess, the quote unquote non-safe route. And I kind of just finally said to myself, you know what? I think it's better in life to take risk and fail rather than to never take that risk and just live the rest of my life regretting never taking that risk. And that goes for a bunch of things, whether it's pursuing the dreams that I have, whether it's talking to a girl or like asking her out, just anything like that right there. I finally decided that, you know what? I would rather just take that risk and fail rather than just regret that I never took it. And that's why the safe route is actually the most dangerous route, because there are so many people who go their entire lives just taking the safe route. To put it simply, take the route that is less traveled, because you're gonna find that even if you fail somehow, even let's say it doesn't work out for you, you're gonna find that you absolutely are glad that you took that route. You're glad that you at least tried it, because it's so much better to try something and fail rather than to never try. Because instead of thinking of what if I fail, think about what if I succeed? What if I actually make it? What if I actually have this dream that I have that I want to succeed at? What if I try it and I actually succeed? And I think that's an important mindset to have. And that's why I just think that this quote unquote safe route is just such a dangerous mindset. Lesson number 4, nothing lasts forever, also applies to the bad things in life. Now, I know this phrase is a very common phrase that you hear, but typically when you hear the phrase nothing lasts forever, it often applies to the good things in life. As I grew older and as I gained more experience from just living life and just seeing all the things that go on around me, I suddenly realized that the phrase nothing lasts forever also applies to the bad things in life. And again, I'm going to use my personal testimony from the pandemic as an example from this. Now, I know it's getting kind of repetitive to constantly bring up the pandemic, but the pandemic really did shape a lot of my worldviews and a lot of the ways I see the world and just how I approach life, whether for the better or for the worse. But it really did change a lot of my worldviews, and one of those things was how I see the phrase nothing lasts forever. Before then, I used to think that that phrase only applied to the good things in life, and during the pandemic I especially thought that. But then at some point I ended up going back to school in person because the mandates finally lifted up. I finally started talking to people, I finally started taking risks and pursuing my dreams. And all of a sudden there was one night where I was just walking home from this celebration that I was at, and I suddenly realized that things had changed so much in my life. And I all of a sudden reflected back to the pandemic years where I was at home just thinking that nothing was ever going to change. That's when all of a sudden it hit me right then and there that the phrase nothing lasts forever also applies to the bad things in life. It reminds me of the ending scene from Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers, where Sam is talking to Frodo and he's telling Frodo about the stories that they used to hear when they were much younger, where these stories were filled with darkness and danger, and they didn't know how the story would end. They didn't know how there was any possible way these stories could end good. But Sam ends up saying that these stories do end in a great way, and he says the line that I think perfectly represents what I'm trying to say. He says,
"It's like in the great stories, Mr. Frodo. The ones that really mattered. Full of darkness and danger they were. And sometimes you didn't want to know the end, because how could the end be happy? How could the world go back to the way it was when so much bad had happened?" But in the end, it's only a passing thing. This shadow. Even darkness must pass. A new day will come. And when the sun shines, it'll shine out the clearer.
And I just think it's so important to realize that right now, yes, you're going through a bad time right now. There's no denying that. But as I said before, nothing lasts forever also applies to the bad things that go on in life. And I guarantee you, whatever bad thing you're going through right now, it's not going to last forever either. Lesson number 3, it's impossible to feel sad without being happy at some point. You know, a lot of times when we feel sad or angry about something, we often think that this is just a permanent emotion that we're gonna have, or that it's impossible to ever feel anything else like that. And I know that this was something that I went through a lot. And I guess there was a point where I kind of just stopped and I just had to sit down and take a break. And that's when all of a sudden it hit me. It's like, yeah, like I'm really sad and angry right now about what's going on. But I guess the only reason why I can feel that is because I was happy at some point. And I think this is something that a lot of people forget, is that ultimately it's kind of a trade-off. Is that if you want to feel true happiness and you want to actually truly feel grateful and happy about your life, you have to at some point feel sad or angry about things that are going on in your life. And you know, it's kind of weird because the whole emotion of sadness and anger, it's almost like a necessary evil, if you know what I mean. It's like a necessary evil where you have to be willing to be sad or angry in order to at some point be happy. And quite frankly, I think it's a trade that I am definitely willing to make, because when I'm happy and when like I'm enjoying the way life is, one of the best feelings when I'm able to just talk with other people, just talk with friends, talk with family, and just be around them. It's such a happy feeling, to the point where when the times come when I do feel sad or do feel angry, like, yeah, they suck. Like, those moments absolutely suck. But I would absolutely deal with the emotions of being sad or angry if it means that I can deal with the emotion of being happy. Lesson number 2 is always be willing to exit your comfort zone. This is definitely one of the most difficult things to do. And believe me, I had problems doing this for many years. But once you finally get into the act of actually exiting your comfort zone, you're going to realize just how much better your life gets. And I think the reason why is because when you stay in your comfort zone, you become stagnated. Like, you don't move up, you don't move down. Over time, as you continue to stay in your comfort zone, that stuff just kind of, in a sense, becomes boring. and you end up becoming depressed because your life just becomes so boring. And in a sense, you actually end up going down as a result because you stagnated for so long. So as I grew older and as the years have gone on, I kind of recognized that one of the things that I have to do if I want to progress and constantly just either get better at what it is I want to do, I always have to be willing to exit my comfort zone. And it's actually kind of crazy the amount of things I've been able to do because I took those initiatives to exit my comfort zone. And it's just really something that I think everybody needs to be willing to do at some point in their life. Because again, there are people who go their entire lives never at any point exiting their comfort zone. Don't get me wrong, I understand. It could be scary. Like, it's absolutely scary, the idea of exiting your comfort zone. But it's important to just make it a normal thing to exit your comfort zone. And you'll often find the more you exit your comfort zone, the happier you will become as a person. And the number one thing I've learned in my 25 years of life on this planet is to always rely on your faith. Through all the trials and tribulations that I've been through, I've learned that relying on my faith is absolutely the most important thing of all. As if the ending of the last video wasn't evident of it, I am a practicing Catholic. I do follow the Catholic faith and I have participated in many activities at my local church. But I think it goes more than that. It's just a matter of just having faith and just knowing that, that the Lord is always going to be there for you regardless. And it was definitely something that just helped me get through just some of the worst time periods in my life. I look back at those time periods and I honestly just wonder how I would have been able to get through them if I didn't rely on my faith. And that's why I just think that it's just so important to always rely on your faith. I just think that even in the bad times in life, if you are still grateful for what is left of the good parts of your life, and you look at the small things in your life that are still good and you're grateful for that right there, I think that's really where your faith can really shine and where you can really just, I don't know, just like make something huge out of it. Because like I said, I've been through like a lot of crazy things in my life. Really, it was my faith that got me through it. So because of the past history of my faith getting me through all these tough times in my life, I really have no reason to stop having faith in the Lord and stop having faith in Jesus Christ. And I think it goes beyond that, even when the good times are going on, because I think a lot of times it's easy for us to forget to practice our faith while the good times are on. Like that one line of, oh, is there a way to know that you're in the good old days before the good old days ended?
I wish there was a way to know you're in the good old days before you've actually left them.
I think it's important to still rely on your faith even during those times right there, because that will remind you that when the bad times do come, to still be grateful and have gratitude for what you have in life. So yeah, I would definitely say that the number one thing that I've learned throughout my 25 years of life on this planet is to just always rely on your faith, regardless of just how terrible things could get. And that's it. That's 25 things that I have learned in 25 years of life on this planet. And thank you guys again for an amazing first 25 videos, and I hope the next 25 videos are even better, and so on and so forth. Please, if you guys haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. And I'm gonna get out of here now because, as I said at the beginning of this video, at the time of me recording this, I'm still just 24 years old. But by the time I upload this, I should be 25 years old already. So I'm gonna go celebrate my birthday. Just thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for supporting and just commenting and just liking my videos and just watching in general. Thank you guys so much for all that. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.